Welcome back to Boring Tales. Tonight, we return to the slow, peaceful world of Thomas, the medieval baker. Let the rhythm of his day carry you gently into rest and into sleep. The rhythm is quiet but firm, a slow, steady breath through the arms. The wooden bench creaks softly with each push. The dough resists, then yields. It becomes smoother, bit by bit, minute by minute. Down, fold, turn. Thomas doesn't speak. He never does while kneading. He watches the dough, feels its texture change beneath his palms. Sticky becomes tacky, tacky becomes soft, soft becomes elastic. Each motion teaches the dough what it needs to become. Each fold reminds it of its shape. Down, fold, turn. He works silently. Only the occasional scrape of dough on wood, the low groan of the bench legs, and the sound of breath rising and falling in a quiet room. He lifts one edge of the dough and folds it across itself. Presses down with the heel of his hand. Then turns it a quarter circle. Again. Down. Fold. Turn. The dough sighs as he presses. A tiny release of air. Not loud. Not sharp. Just breath leaving the grain. He continues. Not counting the time. Not watching the hourglass. Just listening to the dough. It tells him when it's ready. Not with words, but with feel. 10 minutes. 20. Maybe more. There's no exact moment. Only the shift, when resistance becomes spring, when roughness becomes silk. His hands are dusted white now. The dough no longer clings. It stretches slightly, holds its shape, then returns. He presses once more, firmly. Then stops. He lifts the dough. Smooth now. Warm from his hands. He places it gently into the wooden bowl again, lining the bottom with a light coat of flour so it doesn't stick. He covers it with a cloth, a thick, linen wrap, folded twice. The dough rests. Covered. Safe. It will rise on its own now. Quietly. In the warmth of the bakehouse. Thomas washes his hands in the basin, slow, careful rinses. He dries them on the same cloth as always. The fire glows softly behind him. The oven stones are warming. The dough is sleeping. And he leans against the table once more. Waiting. Not impatiently. Just listening. Because dough, like fire, doesn't rush. It grows in stillness. It becomes what it must, slowly. Always slowly. The cloth lies still over the bowl. No motion. No change. Just fabric resting on wood, and beneath it, the dough, curled in on itself, gathering breath. Thomas does not uncover it. Not yet. There is no need. This part takes time. He leaves it near the warmest place in the bakehouse, not close to the flames, but where the stones still hold heat from the night's fire. It will rise best in warmth, not heat. In peace, not pressure. He doesn't watch it constantly. That's not the way. Instead, he moves through quiet tasks, light ones, meant for moments like this. He tidies the flour sacks. Wipes the mixing bench again, even though it's already clean. He checks the cupboard, counts the trays, straightens the lids, brushes a few crumbs into a small pile and tips them out the door for the sparrows. The cloth over the dough moves, just slightly. A gentle swell in its middle. The dough is beginning to breathe. Still, Thomas doesn't lift it. Instead, he takes a small stool and sits near the wall. Not to sleep. Not to work. Just to rest. He watches the shadows on the stones. They shift with the firelight, long and soft, like water rippling against a wall. The wooden beams above him are dark with age. He knows each one. Each knot, each crack, each nail driven in by his own hands or his father's. Outside, he hears the distant voice of a rooster. Late to call. Or perhaps early again. It doesn't matter. The dough is rising. Under the cloth, the yeast moves slowly, quiet bubbles forming, stretching the flour from within. It is not loud. Not visible. But it is happening. Growth in silence. Change without sound. Thomas closes his eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, but just to feel the warmth of the room settle deeper into his skin. His hands rest in his lap, still carrying the faint smell of flour and yeast. The oven cracks softly behind him, a shifting stone, a pop in the wood. All of it is part of the rhythm. Nothing forced. Nothing rushed. Just waiting. Just allowing. He rises only once to check the temperature, placing his hand against the outer stones of the oven, then adjusting the wood slightly to keep the balance. Then he returns. Sits again. Listens again. Time moves slowly here. It's meant to. Bread isn't born quickly. At last, when the shape beneath the cloth has grown full, when it domes softly upward, pressing gently from beneath, Thomas knows it is ready. He stands, steps quietly across the floor, and lifts the cloth. The dough has doubled in size. Its surface is smooth and faintly glossy. A few bubbles peek near the edges. It smells alive. Not strong, but warm. And right. He nods, folds the cloth neatly, and sets it aside. The time has come to divide and shape. To turn this rising mound into the day's loaves. He dusts the table once more, brushes his hands clean, and begins again. The dough rests on the wooden bench. Round, full, alive. It no longer clings to the sides of the bowl. It sags slightly, its rise complete. Thomas brushes a light layer of flour across the surface. Just a dusting, barely enough to coat his hands. The dough responds to his touch, soft and springy, yielding slightly, then returning. He lifts it from the bowl, both arms around its weight. It stretches gently, then settles on the floured table. It doesn't resist. It is ready. He picks up the bench scraper, a flat piece of metal with a worn wooden handle. He presses it into the dough. Not sharply. Just enough to divide. A single line, clean and slow. Then another. And another. He works from the center outward, creating equal parts. Not measured with tools, but by feel, by sight, by years of knowing. Each portion rests where it falls. Soft piles. Waiting. The dough rests on the wooden bench. Round, full, alive. It no longer clings to the sides of the bowl. It sags slightly, its rise complete. Thomas brushes a light layer of flour across the surface. Just a dusting, barely enough to coat his hands. The dough responds to his touch, soft and springy, yielding slightly, then returning. He lifts it from the bowl, both arms around its weight. It stretches gently, then settles on the floured table. It doesn't resist. It is ready. He picks up the bench scraper, a flat piece of metal with a worn wooden handle. He presses it into the dough. Not sharply. Just enough to divide. A single line, clean and slow. Then another. And another. He works from the center outward, creating equal parts. Not measured with tools, but by feel, by sight, by years of knowing. Each portion rests where it falls. Soft piles. Waiting. The dough portions rest quietly. Rounded mounds, soft-edged, rising just slightly as the warmth of the bakehouse holds them. Thomas reaches for the first. His hands dusted with flour. Movements practiced. Calm. He flattens the dough gently with his palm, pressing out the air, not forcefully, just enough. The shape spreads, not wide, but long. Oval. With his fingertips, he folds the far edge inward. Then the near edge over that. A soft roll. A tuck. He presses the seam shut, not with strength, but weight. A calm pressure from the heel of his hand. Then he rolls it gently. Once. Twice. Back and forth. The loaf takes form. Not perfect. But whole. He places it seam side down on the floured board. It rests there, quiet again. He repeats the motion. Flatten. Fold. Tuck. Seal. Roll. One by one. Loaf by loaf. The wood creaks beneath his shifting weight. The flour rises in faint puffs. The light from the small bakehouse window casts a warm band across the bench and across his arms, bare from elbow to wrist. He works without thought. Not because he isn't thinking, but because the body remembers. This is what hands know. This is what mornings feel like. He reaches for the next dough ball. Flattens. Folds. Seals. Rolls. The loaves line up. Neatly. Shoulder to shoulder. Resting. He shapes them all, 12 today. Some smaller for the children. Some larger for the families. A few round ones for the market woman, who prefers hers that way. He places them on wooden boards dusted with coarse flour, spacing them so they don't touch, so they have room to grow again. He covers each board with a cloth. Linen, as always. Cool to the touch. Heavy enough to hold warmth beneath. This is the second rise. The proofing. It is slower, quieter, more subtle, but no less important. Thomas tidies the space again, brushes the bench, wipes the scraper, stacks the empty bowl. The loaves wait. He waits with them. Outside, the sun lifts slowly over the eastern fields. A rooster calls again, this time answered by another. He listens. Not with interest, but with presence. The loaves are forming now from the inside. Not by hands. Not by fire. But by time. Always time. The loaves sit beneath their cloths. Still. Breathing. They've grown, though not loudly. Just enough to fill the space Thomas shaped for them. They are almost ready. But not quite. This is a moment of waiting. Of watching. Of letting go. Thomas doesn't lift the cloths. He doesn't press the dough. He knows the signs. The way the cloth shifts as the air beneath expands. The way the smell changes, richer, slightly sweet, alive. He moves instead to the oven. The fire has burned long enough. No more wood is needed. He takes a long-handled tool, a flat blade called a peel, and sweeps the oven floor. Not quickly. In long, circular motions. Pushing the coals to the side. Clearing the center. Checking the color of the stones beneath. They are light gray now. Even. Clean. The fire has done its work. He closes the door, lets the heat hold. The stones will radiate warmth deep into the loaves. This is not a fire bake. This is a stone bake. Quiet. Surrounding. Still. He prepares the scoring knife, a short blade, sharpened often. He does not rush. He checks the baskets. Brushes flour from the tops. Then, at last, he uncovers the loaves. One by one. Each one soft. Puffed. Domed slightly. He lifts each loaf, gently, places it on the floured peel. Then, just before placing them in the oven, he scores them. A single line. Sometimes two. Not deep, just enough to guide the bread's bloom. It is not decoration. It is purpose. The score tells the loaf where to open, where to breathe. Without it, the crust might crack unevenly. Might split in panic. With it, a controlled rise. A soft parting. He places the first loaf into the oven. Slides it in with care. Not touching the stones with his hands. Only the peel. The dough lands softly. A dull, padded sound. Like a pillow meeting a bed. Then the next. And the next. One row. Then a second. Then the final two. Each loaf finds its space. Each one begins its quiet transformation. He closes the oven door. And waits. The baking begins. The door to the oven stays closed. It must. The heat must hold. Must stay sealed within. Thomas doesn't open it. Not yet. He listens. That's all. The soft creak of the wood beam above him. The low settling of the oven stones. The gentle hiss, barely heard, as moisture escapes from the dough. It sounds like breath. Like a sigh. He knows the signs. Knows the rhythm. He has watched bread rise and bake since he was barely tall enough to reach the bench. This moment is not new, but it is always quiet. He does not leave the bakehouse. Instead, he moves near the door, leans against the frame, and watches the sun move higher through the tiny window slit. The air is warmer now. It smells of crust. Not yet finished, but forming. The fire, once loud and crackling, is only embers now. A soft orange glow beneath the side wall of the oven. Thomas sits. Just for a moment. On the low stool he always uses. Same one his father used. And his father before. The warmth from the oven reaches his knees. Reaches his chest. Soaks into his skin. He runs one hand over his apron, dusts a bit of flour from his wrist. He doesn't need to do anything. The bread is doing it all now. Inside that sealed chamber, the dough expands, the crust hardens, the steam escapes, the crumb forms. He hears one crack. Then another. Sharp. Clear. Then silence again. That's the sign of the crust lifting. Setting in place. Stretching gently under heat. Still, he does not open the door. Just listens. Just waits. The air smells golden. That's the only way he knows to describe it. A mix of toast, of grain, of something full and round. He doesn't speak. There is no one to speak to, and nothing that needs words. Only the oven. Only the bread. Only the hour. Time passes, not fast, not slow, just steady. As it always does in the bakehouse. Thomas rises from the stool. His knees creak slightly. But he does not mind. He moves with care. He reaches for the peel again, the same flat wooden blade, smooth with use, warm to the touch. Then, he opens the oven door. A soft breath of heat escapes. Not a roar. Not a blast. Just a quiet wave. Dry and comforting. The inside glows. The loaves have risen, not in a hurry, but with calm strength. The crusts are pale gold now, edges just beginning to deepen. Thomas slides the peel beneath the first loaf. Not lifting, just nudging. He turns it gently. A quarter turn. Then lets it rest again. He does the same to the next. And the next. Each one. Carefully. Softly. He does not scrape. Does not jab. The bread is delicate now. Still forming. Still breathing. Turning helps it bake evenly. It's not just about heat. It's about harmony. Balance. Even the bread deserves balance. He checks the undersides. Not touching. Just looking. Some are a shade darker. Some a bit lighter. But all is well. He closes the door again. No need to rush. The second half of the baking is slower than the first. This is when the crust thickens. When the crumb settles. When the scent becomes full. He places the peel back in its place. Wipes his hands on the apron. Returns to the stool. Outside, the birds are louder now. The lane beyond the bakehouse has a few more footsteps. But inside, the quiet continues. The bread turns itself now, not in direction, but in becoming. Thomas watches the rising warmth on the bakehouse wall. It shifts ever so slightly. Like a sundial only he knows how to read. Soon, he will open the door again. Just once more. The time has come. Thomas stands again. Not quickly. Just naturally. He feels the air shift as he moves, warmer near the oven, cooler by the doorway. The bakehouse holds both kinds of quiet. He reaches for the peel. The handle is warm, but not hot. The wood familiar under his fingers. He opens the oven door, wider this time. A long breath of heat spills out. Dry. Golden. Full of scent. Bread. Real bread. Not dough. Not promise. But bread. The loaves rest where he left them. They have deepened in color. Not brown, but chestnut. With edges darkened just enough. The scoring has opened. The crust has bloomed. Some loaves have small cracks along the sides. That's good. It means they grew well. He slides the peel beneath the first one. Carefully. Lifts. Pauses. Then carries it to the wooden table beside the bench. He sets it down. It lands with a padded thump. Soft, but certain. The crust crackles as it adjusts to the air. Cooling begins immediately. He does the same with the next. Lift. Carry. Place. One by one, he removes each loaf. Their undersides browned, just kissed by the stones. The oven slowly empties. But the bakehouse fills, with scent, with heat, with bread. 12 loaves. Each one slightly different. Each one complete. He closes the oven door. Lets the stones begin to cool. They've done their work. He leans over the loaves, just slightly, breathing in the crust. He does not cut them. Not yet. They must rest. The steam inside is still moving, still setting the crumb. Cutting too soon would collapse it. So he waits. Again. He sits near the table, listening to the gentle crackle. It's faint. But it's there. The loaves speak, in tiny pops and slow settling. Thomas does not smile, but he feels full. This is the moment that matters. The making is done. The waiting is done. Now, the bread simply is. He folds his hands on his lap, dust still on his sleeves. And lets the silence hold him. The loaves have rested. Not long. Just enough. Their crusts are cool now. Set. Still. Thomas rises from his stool and moves toward the wooden shelf by the door. It's simple, just a plank held up by 2 thick beams. But it is his shop front. The morning light is soft there. It falls in long stripes across the wood. Dust floats in the beam, but not much. The air has been swept. The space is clean. He lifts one loaf at a time. Careful. Always careful. Each one is placed with the crust facing outward, the scored line visible. He arranges them in 2 rows, 6 above, 6 below. There is no sign. No price written down. But the people know. They know Thomas's bread. They know the time to come. They know the smell. He dusts the shelf lightly, not for need, but for ritual. The cloth he uses is worn but clean. He folds it after wiping, tucks it back into the basket near the stool. Then he opens the door. Just a little. Cool air drifts in, mixing with the warm smell of bread. It's early still, but footsteps pass slowly outside. One by one, the village begins to wake. He does not call out. He does not need to. The scent will do the calling. The morning settles in like a quilt being laid across the village. Soft. Quiet. Layered in stillness. The bakehouse door is open now, just enough to let the scent drift outward, the smell of fresh crust, cooling grain, warmth from stone. Thomas waits behind his shelf. He does not rush. Does not lean forward. He simply stands, hands resting at his sides, fingers still dusted faintly with flour. His breath is slow. He listens. To footsteps on stone. To the quiet shuffle of wooden soles. To the cooing of a pigeon somewhere in the eaves above. Then, a soft voice, low and familiar. "Morning, Thomas." He looks up, nods once. It's Milda, the widow from the far lane. She comes every 3rd day. Always at this hour. Always with the same cloth sack. She doesn't look at the loaves directly. She looks at him. He knows what she wants. Without a word, he reaches for a loaf, not the biggest, not the smallest. One with a gently split crust, just slightly darker on the edge. He holds it out. She opens her sack, and he places it inside. She pulls a coin from her sleeve, not quickly, but as if from memory. The coin is dull, edges smooth from use. He takes it without looking, places it into the wooden bowl beneath the counter. No need to count. No need to weigh. Their exchange is made of quiet trust. "Thank you, Thomas." He nods again. She leaves. No more words. Her footsteps retreat, soft against the stones. He returns to stillness. Not waiting, just being. Then another figure appears. Slower this time. It is Henrik, the cobbler's apprentice. Younger, but quiet. He always comes for the second warmed loaf. Never the freshest. Thomas knows. He reaches down, selects a loaf from the lower row, one that rested longer, cooler to the touch. Henrik gives 2 copper coins. More than needed. But he never asks for change. He takes the loaf in both hands, as if it is something important. And it is. He murmurs a word, not loud enough to hear. Then he turns, and disappears down the lane. More steps come. A mother with a baby wrapped against her shoulder. She smiles softly. Thomas gives her a smaller loaf. Softer. Rounder. Good for tearing with one hand. A merchant's boy. He rushes in, but slows at the sight of Thomas. Thomas hands him 2 loaves. Wrapped loosely in cloth. He says nothing. The boy nods, then hurries back the way he came. Even the hurried ones move slower here. The bakehouse holds its own time. And so it goes. Step by step. Loaf by loaf. No shouting. No lines. Only people arriving in their own time, in their own way, for bread made with quiet hands. Thomas's eyes soften. Not from tiredness, but from the rhythm of it. The stillness. The simplicity. Coins touch wood. Cloth folds around crust. Fingers curl around handles. The air remains warm. The smell of baked grain lingers. Not strong. Not heavy. Just present. Always present. Only one loaf remains. It sits alone on the lower shelf. Crust still warm. Color rich. It is not better than the others. Not worse. Just the last. The one that stayed behind. Thomas looks at it, not with urgency, not with expectation, but with stillness. His hands rest on the edge of the table. Fingers loose. Arms heavy, but calm. The village outside has quieted again. The early wave has passed. The stones are still. A cartwheel turns, but it is far away. Inside the bakehouse, the warmth has softened. The oven, now silent, holds only the memory of fire. The last loaf waits. Thomas does not move. He lets the moment stretch. He knows the rhythm. He trusts it. Sometimes, the last loaf is taken by a late visitor, a boy sent on errands, a mother delayed by chores, an elder with a quiet hunger. Sometimes, it is not taken. Sometimes, it becomes his own. He does not mind either way. The loaf is not in a hurry. It rests. It cools. It settles into its crust. He leans back slightly, resting against the beam. The wood creaks softly beneath him. But he does not shift. His breath is long. Even. The last loaf holds the day's story. Every hour before it. Every motion, from mixing, to kneading, to shaping, to baking. It carries the scent of ash and flour. The shape of his hand. The mark of the stone floor. It is just bread. And yet, it is everything. Time continues. A shadow passes outside. Then returns. Then fades. He hears a footstep pause near the doorway. Then a voice. Is there one left? It is Anna, the washerwoman's daughter. She is shy. Always comes late. Always asks softly. Thomas does not answer with words. He simply turns, lifts the loaf, and places it on the counter. She unwraps a piece of cloth, folded many times. Inside are 4 small coins. Worn thin. But enough. He places the loaf into her basket. She pulls the cloth over it. Nods. He nods in return. She leaves, basket in hand. And now, the shelf is empty. Thomas stands alone. The scent of bread still in the air. But the work is done. The morning has passed. And the bakehouse is still. The loaves are gone. The coins have been placed in their bowl. The cloths folded. The shelf now bare. Thomas turns inward again. Toward the table. Toward the space where the work was done. The bakehouse feels wider now. Cooler. Not from wind, but from the absence of heat. No more fire. No more steam. Just quiet. And flour. So much flour. Dusted across the table's surface, fine, white, soft like sifted chalk. It clings to the edges. Sits in the corners. Forms faint circles where bowls once rested. Thomas steps forward. His feet are silent on the stone. He does not rush. He reaches for the cloth, the one he keeps hanging by the side rail. Not the coarse one. The soft one. Worn with use, edges frayed just a little. He folds it in half, presses it flat with one hand, and begins. Thank you for resting with Boring Tales. If you're still awake, feel free to let the next episode play. Or drift gently into sleep. And if you're enjoying these quiet stories, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the calm.